Hey folks, I'm Nicole Gilbert, and this is the Nicole Gilbert Quilts YouTube channel. In this video, I am going to go through how to make a 4-in-1 half square triangle. This will make your half square triangle creation faster and more fabric efficient. Okay folks, let's dive in. Okay folks, so here we are over at the sewing machine, and we are going to be doing our 4-in-1 half square triangles. Now I'm looking to have 4 2.5-inch half square triangles at the completion of this process. So I am starting with 4.25-inch squares. In the description below this video, there's a link where you can download a chart that will list out kind of the most commonly looked for half square triangle sizes and what your starter blocks or starter squares should size-wise be so that you can get to that. There's like, if you Google it, there's a funky formula where you have to like multiply by 0.64 and it's a whole thing. I've done the work for you, so if you just go over to that, you can just have that chart. Also, you'll notice in your Googles that some of the charts have different start sizes. Mine err on the slightly larger side. I always want a perfect half square triangle, and the only real way to accomplish that is to trim down. So I like to do a little bit bigger and trim versus trying to be perfectly exact, and then things can get a little cattywampus on you. So I'm getting a 2.5-inch square, half square triangle. I'm starting with 4.25 square blocks, and I'm just gonna put them right sides together. And the light on my sewing machine is making this a little dark. Okay, so we're putting these right sides together, and you'll see I'm using my 1/4-inch presser foot with the guide. I love that little guide. It just really keeps me on the straight and narrow. And you'll also see that you can kind of see this red line right here. If this is a guide beam that will also help keep my fabric on that 1/4-inch. But if your machine doesn't have a laser guide beam, you can just use something like Cluck Cluck Sew measurement tape, which is something that I've used for years, but very excited about this machine that actually has the guide beam in it. So I'm going to go ahead, raise my presser foot. Now, we're just going to be keeping a 1/4-inch seam allowance all the way around our square. Now, what I suggest doing is being very familiar with your presser foot and where on your presser foot denotes a 1/4-inch away from your needle. This will allow you to turn in the corners so that you can, once you're coming down here, when you're a 1/4-inch away, you can turn and continue down the next side. So that's one thing. Another is I would definitely have your needle down, if that's an option on your machine, to select needle down so that way when you stop in those corners, your needle is down. And that way when you raise your presser foot or use your pivot feature, your fabric is staying exactly where you would like it to be. Now on my machine, I can set it so that my needle automatically goes down and my presser foot automatically comes up every time I stop sewing. And so for those of you who are unfamiliar, I'm currently using a Baby Lock Chorus. I'm obsessed with it, but this is starting to become more standardized features. So many of you will also have the ability to do this on your machines. Okay, so let's get going. So I'm going to lower my presser foot and get going. And see, I'm slowing down as I get towards that edge because I want to make sure I'm stopping with that 1/4 of an inch. And then I just turn and I continue. Notice that my needle stays down, my presser foot comes up, and I turn. And we do it again. And one last time. And on this one, we're just going to sew right off the edge. And cut our threads. And here you have it. So let me keep this in the light for you. I have this sewn line all the way around all 4 edges of my fabric. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this. So let's head on over to the pressing mat, or rather my cutting mat. Okay folks, so here we are at the cutting mat, and we are going to be cutting that square that we just sewn together. So remember, we have a 1/4 inch seam that has been sewn all around all 4 edges of this square. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be cutting this on the diagonal in both directions. So the first, I'm just using here a 6.5 inch square ruler, but really any ruler will do. What you want to do is make sure you align these corners. So we want to make sure we get this nice line along the corners. We use our rotary cutter, and here we go. And now we have these 2 triangles, and you'll have it open here in the middle, and then you'll have a seam up each side. Now what we'll want to do now, and you can stack them and just cut up both of them, but I really am obsessed with very accurate half square triangles, and so you lose a little bit of accuracy every time you stack. So I like to cut them individually, and what I do is I line what is right now the only free edge or raw edge with one of the marking lines on my ruler, and I make sure that the edge of my ruler is bisecting that point. And so once I have that line up, I cut, move those to the side, bring in the other piece, do the exact same thing. And now I have these 4 pieces, which I will now press into 4 half square triangles. Okay, so let me go ahead. I'm going to press, and I will meet you here in a moment for the trimming. Okay folks, we are back from the sewing station, and you'll see that I have these beautiful half square triangles, and we have dog ears. I personally prefer to press my seams open, so I have kind of this style dog ear, where if you press just to one side, they'll just be on the one side. But I want these to be 2.5 inch. And if I put this on my cutting mat, I see that we are just over 2.5 inches, which is okay. I prefer to be just over because that means I can trim and then they're going to be exact. So I'm using the same ruler I used to cut the corners. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to align it with I'm going to make sure my seam is lined up this 45-degree line on my ruler, and this will keep my trimming straight so that my final, because the thing is, if you don't follow your seam, what will happen is you'll have a perfectly 2.5 inch square, but once you sew it into your project, your half square triangle will be off because your seam wasn't straight. So we want to keep that seam on that 45 degree line rather. And then we go down to that other bottom corner. And you'll see that I'm shifting my square, cutting at the bottom of my ruler or cutting at the top of my ruler, and that's so that I can turn my half square triangle so that it can stay, the seam can stay on alignment while still trimming all four sides. And there you have it. There goes. I'm an obsessive cleaner when it comes to my sewing. This is driving me nuts. This will always drive me nuts. So if you're used to my videos, you'll see me cleaning up as I go. But there you have it. There goes our first perfect 2.5 inch half square triangle. And now I'm just going to do the rest. And there you have it, guys. We have 4 perfect half square triangles. And don't forget, there in the description below, there is a chart for you to download so that you can have a quick reference guide to ensure that you have the right size starting blocks for the desired finished half square triangle size. Okay, guys, happy sewing. See you soon.